March 14th, 2008, a date that for many people in the city of Atlanta started off like any other day. A busy day for the city that is often referred to as the capital of the southern United States. But this particular day was one that was especially exciting for sports fans, as the SEC Men's Basketball Tournament was ongoing. The winner of said event would go on to compete in the NCAA Basketball Tournament later the next week. March 14th was going to witness Mississippi State play off against Alabama, and then the University of Kentucky play off against the University of Georgia at 9:45 p.m. at the Georgia Dome, in the heart of downtown Atlanta. The first game was a close, tense fight to see who would advance further into the tournament. The score was 56-59, and with virtually no time left, player Mikail Riley scored a three-point shot for Alabama, forcing the game into overtime. Fans were going crazy both in the Georgia Dome and at home, but as the game progressed into overtime, the television signals started to suffer from interference of some kind, and the game suddenly stopped as loud noises started to engulf the arena. What was going on? Unbeknownst to the sports fans watching on their televisions across the country, a historic event was ongoing just outside of the Georgia Dome. A discrete supercell had produced a significant tornado in downtown Atlanta, with a path length stretching a little over 6 miles. For the first time since the city was founded in 1847, downtown Atlanta was struck by a tornado. The tornado seemed to come out of nowhere, and to many people in the state of Georgia, the Atlanta tornado of 2008, while not being the strongest tornado of what would become a more substantial outbreak of tornadoes the next day, became the most well-known tornado of the outbreak, and a tornado that is still remembered by the residents of Atlanta and in North Georgia. As a Georgia native myself, I feel like it is worth covering the Atlanta tornado on the basis of where it happened and the rarity of the event. Today, I will be covering the Atlanta tornado of 2008, where I will be talking about the state of severe weather so far that year, the general synopsis, the timeline of events, and the aftermath. Welcome to Nature's Fury. 2008 got off to a highly active start even before March rolled around, with a couple significant weather events occurring just in the first few weeks of the year. The year started off with a severe outbreak in the upper Midwest of all places and then the southern United States. From January 7th through the 11th, a tornado outbreak sequence spawned 72 tornadoes, with the majority of those occurring on the 7th and 8th. Then later that same month, on January 29th, a severe straight-line wind event occurred in the lower Ohio River Valley, causing straight-line wind damage across the lower Ohio River Valley. The activity in February was historically active, and February of 2008 still has the record for the most tornadoes in the month, period. Of course, most of those tornadoes and the majority of records regarding severe weather from February that year came from the Super Tuesday outbreak, an outbreak that I made a detailed video on that I recommend checking out after this one, and all my videos for that. The Super Tuesday outbreak spawned a total of 87 tornadoes, a record that is still held to this day for the most tornadoes spawned by a tornado outbreak in the month of February. Of those tornadoes, 5 of them were rated EF4, another record for February. If you want to know more about it, yet again, watch the video I made on it after this. Severe weather activity continued to be unusually significant for the rest of the month, with 3 separate tornado outbreaks, although not to the same degree of significance as Super Tuesday. One of those was a serial derecho that occurred in Alabama into Georgia on February 26th. In March, there were 2 smaller outbreaks that occurred before March 14th. From March 2nd through the 4th, 26 tornadoes touched down across the lower Mississippi Valley, Southeast, and Mid-Atlantic, with 2 of those being EF2s. From March 6th through the 7th, 13 tornadoes touched down across the Gulf Coast. Ever since Super Tuesday, the severity of these events and the number of tornadoes spawned by the storm systems associated with them were relatively weak, and the damage was limited to a few sparse areas. However, going into March 14th and into the 15th, the Storm Prediction Center was closely monitoring the potential for severe weather and what was expected to be a severe weather outbreak across the southern United States. I'm not going to cover what happened outside of the Atlanta tornado this time because of lack of footage, so for now I'll just go over what happened with the Atlanta tornado. But real quick, only a small portion of the people who like these weather documentaries I create are subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content I create, consider subscribing. It helps support the channel and tells me I'm doing something right. We are really close to hitting 10,000 subscribers, and after making content for 7 years now, it still blows me away from the amount of support I've gotten for these videos. Anyways, back to the Atlanta tornado. The event itself was actually not supposed to have tornadoes as the primary threat, at least on the 14th. A shortwave trough was expected to move through the Mississippi Valley and move eastward through the southeastern United States. A mid-level jet was expected to reach the southern plains by that evening, and a weak surface low-pressure system was expected to move from its position in the central portions of the country to the mid-Atlantic states. The system was expected to experience cyclogenesis, and a low-level jet was expected to strengthen in response to the shortwave trough. But for areas including Atlanta, nothing was really expected. A general thunderstorm risk encompassed most of the city, with most of the city not even being included in a 2% tornado risk. Only the 6C and 1C outlooks had Atlanta in a 2% tornado risk. The risk for the 14th was expected to be a wind and hail-driven threat across the lower Mississippi Valley. The tornado threat was expected to come in the next day. So everyone in Georgia went on with their days that Friday, with the weather being an afterthought due to the extremely unfavorable conditions across Georgia that day. Just a note real quick, I would go further in depth with the environmental factors, but there's nothing on Tornado Archive or the SPC's archive website for me to go off of, so I have to leave it at that. So with the stage, or lack thereof, set up, March 14th came and the events began to unfold. In the early morning hours of the 14th, rain encompassed most of North Georgia as a low-pressure system moved north of the state. Weather that day was relatively unremarkable, nothing special or out of the ordinary until near the evening hours. In the late evening and into the early nighttime hours, a cluster of thunderstorms began to develop in northwest Georgia. Nothing severe initially, but thunderstorms nevertheless. At 9 p.m., the Storm Prediction Center updated their Day 1 convective outlook to include a 2% chance for tornadoes that included Atlanta, noting the cluster of storms to the northwest. Northwest of the city of Atlanta, a discrete supercell, nowhere near the region expecting severe weather that day, formed. Many aspects of the tornadic supercell associated with the Atlanta tornado were odd, and I'd like to talk about some of those aspects before I go ahead with what the tornado did. First of all was its location. It was a single supercell with no storms anywhere else in the metro Atlanta area. Secondly was the storm's motion. 9 times out of 10, thunderstorms in the southeastern United States tend to move towards the northeast because of upper-level wind patterns and steering currents and a bunch of other factors that are too much to explain in a single video. All that being said, this supercell decided to move in a southeasterly direction, which, for all of the reasons I've just mentioned, make the supercell's motion uncommon to say the least. Regardless of the peculiar observations of the supercell itself, at 9:38 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the Atlanta tornado touched down. The Atlanta tornado touched down at 9:38 p.m. near the intersection between Simpson and Burbank Streets in the Vine City neighborhood just west of downtown Atlanta. The tornado initially moved nearly due east, hitting the Georgia World Congress Center, causing portions of the roof to collapse and the glass windows broke on the side of the building. The tornado passed within 100 yards of the Georgia Dome, and yet the Dome experienced the effects of the tornado firsthand. Debris fell onto the basketball court below. The roof suffered major damage, with holes being torn into the roof from the tornado. The catwalk was swinging back and forth, and the rafters above the crowd of fans below were swinging left to right. Panic ensued, as people in the Georgia Dome began to run for their safety. All of this occurred, even though the tornado did not directly hit the Georgia Dome itself. The tornado intensified as it struck Olympic Park, damaging brick buildings in the area. The tornado then took aim at the CNN Center, which suffered significant damage from the tornado, breaking numerous windows, and many cars on the streets below in downtown Atlanta were smashed by falling debris. Skyscrapers in the area suffered from broken windows, a scene that was apparent in any structures that were in the crosshairs of the tornado. The tornado weakened briefly as it moved further towards the southeast, hitting 5 points and moving through portions of Georgia State University, causing EF1 damage. After crossing I-75, the tornado intensified again, producing EF2 damage at the Cotton Mill Lofts, which suffered some of the most significant damage from the tornado. The roof was blown off, and exterior walls on the top and 4th floors were blown inward. 2 sections of the 4th floor collapsed all the way down into the basement, trapping several people. However, the tornado began to weaken and shrink in size as it moved southeast into DeKalb County, producing EF1 damage for 1 mile in far western portions of the county before lifting just west of I-20 at 9:50 p.m. The tornado was on the ground for 12 minutes, traveling a total of 6.25 miles with a peak width of 200 yards and peak winds of 130 miles per hour. The tornado caused a little over $25 million in damages, injuring 30 and killing 1. Many people in Atlanta who were out and about had no idea what just happened. Some were speculating it could have been a tornado, but that was a conclusion that not a lot of people who were in the downtown area had, considering the downtown area of the city of Atlanta had never been hit by a tornado before this point. However, in the early morning hours of March 15th, NWS Peachtree City confirmed that an EF2 tornado had traveled through downtown Atlanta. But even after this, Mother Nature decided that it would be really funny to scare downtown Atlanta again the day after. Shortly after 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on March 15th, WSB TV tower cams captured what seemed to be, at that instant, a tornado on the ground near the city of Atlanta. Meteorologists Glenn Burns and Brad Nitz expressed their concern of what looked like to be a possibly large tornado on the ground. With this in mind, NWS Peachtree City issued a tornado emergency for Atlanta going into DeKalb County. However, there ended up being no tornado at all. In retrospect, what Glenn and Brad were looking at might have been a rain shaft of some kind. But in the moment, especially after the events of the night before, the NWS and meteorologists in Atlanta most likely did not want to take any chances. But as morning came on March 15th, people were now able to see the damage firsthand. The damage along the tornado's 6.25 mile path was minimal to most areas. However, due to the high population density of Atlanta and the number of structures in close proximity to each other, the damage was still a sight to behold. The damage done to the Georgia World Congress Center was minimal, however, portions of the roof did cave in at the east side of the building. The Georgia Dome suffered roof damage from the tornado, despite not taking a direct hit from it. However, the damage was significant enough for the NCAA to postpone the basketball game that was scheduled for 9:45 p.m. on March 14th between the University of Georgia and the University of Kentucky. Brick buildings in downtown suffered major damage, and strewn metal and various pieces of debris littered the streets of the downtown area. Skyscrapers and high-rise buildings suffered window damage. A variety of major landmark buildings or businesses suffered damage in one way or another from the tornado, including Centennial Olympic Park, the CNN Center, the World Congress Center, the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, the Martin Luther King Center, alongside many other landmark buildings in the city. The worst damage was of course at the Cotton Mill Lofts, where the building suffered significant damage on the upper floors and the partial collapse of the 4th floor. In total, 50 homes were damaged from the tornado, alongside several multi-story towers and commercial buildings near and east of Centennial Olympic Park. But this tornado could have been far deadlier and injurious if it weren't for the 3-point shot made by Mikail Riley that sent the basketball game in the Georgia Dome into overtime. If the game hadn't been sent into overtime, people in the stadium would have likely flooded into the streets outside of the building, and would have begun leaving the area, putting them in the path of the Atlanta tornado, which may have injured hundreds and killed dozens, more than what was observed that night. Unintentionally, Mikail Riley ended up being a hero for this tornado, whether he knew it at that moment or not. A story that is still remembered by sports fans to this day. The Atlanta tornado of 2008, all things considered, was not a very strong tornado, at least compared to what else I've covered on this channel, with winds of 130 miles per hour, giving it a rating of high-end EF2. Don't get me wrong, this means it was still a significant tornado, but seeing as how I've only covered EF3s and higher for the most part, it's definitely the weakest I've gone into detail with. In reality, if a tornado like this happened anywhere else, this tornado probably would not be talked about at all. However, it's because of where and when it hit that makes the Atlanta tornado a tornado that is worth talking about. This was the first time in recorded history where a tornado tore through downtown Atlanta. Many got close, but none of the tornadoes beforehand went through downtown. Its location in an area that was not expecting any significant tornado development also makes the Atlanta tornado an interesting footnote in the grand scheme of things. A sign that even when nothing is specifically marked, it's not a bad idea to keep an eye out for the weather, especially if it feels unusual outside. Since then, a few other tornadoes have touched down near Atlanta proper, mostly in southern Fulton County. However, none of them were stronger than EF1. The Atlanta tornado of 2008 also serves as a good reminder that tornadoes can happen anywhere, not just on the open fields of the Great Plains and Dixie Alley. Wow, Alferia made a short video. What is this blasphemy? Okay, so I just want to say thanks for all the support lately. The channel is about to hit 10,000 subscribers, and as someone who has been making scripted content in one form or another for over 5 years, it just blows my mind that this rapid growth has happened in such a short period of time. I cannot thank you guys enough. It's something that I literally don't have any words to describe how I'm feeling about it. I've also seen some concerns about my health and potential burnout from this YouTube thing in the comments section, and don't worry, I'm fine. I honestly enjoy doing this, and my love for research and video creation is what keeps me going. Anyways, some brief updates regarding what I have planned. The Sandy documentary is next, and I'm going to try and keep it under an hour at length. While yes, the December 10th video is often seen as my best work and whatnot, I do believe that the fact that it is nearly 2 hours long is something that was probably not the best idea regarding overall performance video-wise. At most, I'm keeping these at 40 minutes from now on unless I state otherwise. After that, I got a short hypothetical video idea I want to give a shot at the end of November, and then I'll be covering the November 17th, 2013 tornado outbreak in early November, the March 25th, 2021 tornado outbreak in late November, a video on Hurricane Eta in early December, and to end the year off, I will be doing a retrospective on all of the videos I've made this year and doing corrections as I go along. Special thanks to all my proofreaders, including Alice and Rishi, and the people subscribed to the channel's Patreon, those including Montpellier and Adorn Cod 987 on the Alfie's Army tier, and Avery Toyota on the Alf Mini tier. If you want early access to my scripts and eventual videos on how I do my videos, consider checking it out. It helps support me directly and allows me to purchase new equipment and whatnot. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts on the video, share it around, all that jazz. It helps me a lot and tells me I'm doing something right. That's all I gotta say, so with that being said, thank you all for the support, it really does mean a lot. I'm Alferia, you all have a good one, you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you again for Sandy.